after our 5-minute break to change the disc. I'm not going to call it the tape. I know that Member Brooks has some questions.
Great.
Could we allow him to ask his questions and then reevaluate what we're doing with the meeting? Okay, Member Brooks.
Thank you, Miss. I have a couple of questions on English language learning. The first question is, how long does it usually take for a student to learn enough English to do their studies? Is there a
There's not necessarily a timeline. It varies from student to student. What I can tell you is that you see the most progress with our newcomer students. So where, you know, a lot of times people panic and they worry and they're like, oh my God, they know absolutely no English. We're not gonna get anywhere with them. The gains that they make, because they're like sponges. So you see gains with them much faster than you do with some of our long-term EL students. So students who may come in knowing some English. There's a threshold, and I'll say when you look at the research that talks about our students, like after 3 years, if they're not proficient in English, they kind of reach they become stagnant. And so that's why we have to retool and do some things differently with those students. So on an average, we would say 3 years.
Is it different with starting at the different ages?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the younger they are, the greater the chances are of them making that progress.
Okay. Let's see. What about the translators, English language, or translators for each? Do we have translators for every different language of the students?
So far, we've been able to find them. What I can tell you is that MDE has a vetted list of companies, and so we go through those companies to find the translators. So just recently, we were looking for a translator for Uzbek, and so the company that we normally go through, they didn't have anyone, and so it took us calling about 4 or 5 different companies, but we found an Uzbek translator. And so actually, I met with her today.
Do they stay with us permanently, or
No.
do they,
So they just
specific.
come in and provide a service.
Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. Is English taught just like any other foreign language or anything the same way? Like I remember when I learned French, and it was like starting out with basic words and stuff. Are the students taught English that way, or are they just taught what's specific to the class that they need to go through?
So when we think about language acquisition for our English learners, what we do know, we talk about BICS versus CAPS. The BICS versus CAPS, which is your social language versus your academic language. So oftentimes you'll see our English learners where they have the social language, and so people think that, oh, they speak English because you see them conversing with their peers on the playground, or, you know, they can hold a small conversation with you. But that's different than the academic language. So when we start with, let's say, newcomer students, we do start with that social language, because that's survival language. Like I shared earlier, them needing to know, okay, where do I go to get to the bus stop? Where do I go to the bathroom? That's that social language for them. But then when you start to talk about the academic language, that's a little different. So we start with pretty much like the early literacy skills, where you're doing the phonemic awareness, you're doing the phonics, because you want to build that foundation first and foremost. We also work with the students in terms of code switching, where we allow them to utilize their language if they're literate in their native language, because some of our students aren't literate in their native language. Many of them are, but we do allow them to use their native language and then bridge that over. So you may see teachers where they will create dictionaries for the kids, where they will say, okay, this is what this is, like this is a clock in English, right? So they'll have a picture of a clock, and then they may have the kids then in their language translate what a clock is. To do the same things with some of the academic language in terms of like with social studies, some of the conversations that you're having, or some of the, I won't say conversations, but some of the vocabulary words that you're teaching. So if you're talking about, let's say, wars, you may say, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what's the word for war in your country. Do you know what I mean? You start in your language, you start to have those conversations to bridge them over.
Is the translator works along with the teacher? Or
So
are they
typically,
taken off to the side? Or?
so the translators
the
typically come
translator.
in for parent meetings. We are beginning to use translators like with M-STEP. So this year we were allowed to have translators for M-STEP. So we have had a translator come in and work with the student to help her take the M-STEP test. But typically we only have the translators come in for the parent meetings. And so they come in, and they'll come in for parent-teacher conferences. So we try to schedule, let's say if we have a building that has 4 Spanish-speaking families and they need a Spanish translator, then we try to schedule those in that block of time of 2 hours, and then the translator will just move from classroom to classroom. But it's not our personal translator, so they just come in and they provide that service for us. And then the next time we need a translator, it may be the same one, it may be a different one. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
You okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Brooks asked most of the questions that I had. I have one more in this area.
Okay.
We talked about the high scoring or high WIDA scoring students and how we provide additional support for them in our focus or in our focus schools, because we have a large population of English language learners there. What do we do in those those schools that are don't have the same density of EL students? How do we support those students that then may have scored high in the WIDA score but still need additional support?
Okay, so what I was talking about when I said in our high incidence buildings was where we focused our PD for this year. And one of the reasons why we chose, excuse me, just the high incidence buildings was because we also had the PD going on for readers and writers workshop. So we wanted to be cognizant of how many teachers we were pulling out in terms of subs and how often we had teachers out of the building. So we looked at those high incidence buildings first
Got it.
for that training, but we plan to train all of our 4th and 5th grade teachers.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so rather than bringing back all of our teaching and learning department people, I think it would be good to finish up those questions, and then we could do the rest of the presentation on our next board meeting. What does everybody think?
Works for me.
Were we going to reschedule that meeting? Was that
We are not at that point in our agenda yet.
So my next questions was on, I don't remember who the person was. It was part of the, Nick, can we go to the next slide? Next one. And then, I think it's the next one. No, it's the one, hold on. It was the one that where we talked about the implementation, the multi-tier support system, and the differentiated instruction. I don't have page numbers on this. It was the progress towards English language arts workshop. Yep, that was it. I think
Maureen?
you just had it.
I think it was Maureen.
Maureen. So, Maureen, I guess this is on the preschool program that we have for the early literacy. I really like that the concept of that, because we help give those kids a head start to help identify issues or problems, or to help them to be really effective and make sure that we can meet that 3rd grade reading bill.
Right.
What do we do for those kids that are not part of our preschool programs? What opportunities or what things can we do to take the work that we're doing in our internal preschool programs and either share it with other preschool programs throughout our community, or to share it with parents that are looking to help their kids to get ahead? I mean, obviously the right answer is join our preschool program, but that can't be the answer for all students, because we don't
Right.
have room to do that.
Right. We've had discussion around that very concept, and we have begun to explore some thoughts about summer programming for our incoming kindergartners who may have had experiences in preschool outside of the district. We've also talked about looking at young fives and kindergarten in a little bit of a different way at the beginning of the school year around bringing students in kind of in a more staggered approach. But those are just exploration at this point where we're really where we would be able to zero in on some of those early literacy skills in kindergarten in a little bit different way than we have. But I think our best course of action is to explore that summer kind of experience. And Kimberly May and I have talked about that too, with respect to EL students coming into the district for the first time, maybe in the summer, and also that transition from preschool to kindergarten for our students that we may not have had time with. Yeah. So, but we don't have anything in place. We certainly have conversations to begin that work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
More questions?
I have lots more questions.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I'm getting there. I think there's only 3 more pages, or 3 more sections left. The next section was on the special education.
Julie?
So Julie, we talked about the work that we're doing with the ASD consultants and how those students can sometimes be twice exceptional, and they're high academically achieving, but they also to have other challenges. I know that we've done this in one school, and as I've talked to a number of the TAG parents, they've experienced some of these same situations where they have kids that need additional support in the TAG program, and that magnet program has worked for some of them, although it creates other challenges there. What are we looking to do for the rest of the district beyond that one school where we've been able to provide an ASD a resource and pull those students out?
The program it's at Dotson Elementary, and the students that are in that program are from all of our elementaries.
Oh,
It's
okay.
sort of a hub.
So it is a magnet program that
Yes.
we've done. Okay,
Yes.
so we've taken the same approach that we've done with TAG, but we've done that as a magnet program.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And that was my questions on that section.
Okay. Other questions on special ed?
No, I'm
No, I'm asking the other board members, just in case, before we move on to the next section.
This is a question for you, Mark, on the technology. I really appreciate the clear explanation on JIRA. I'm glad that we've got that, and it sounds like it's accessible to everybody. So they're using that to drive all their tickets in.
Correct.
Great.
Well, I should say, if it's on fire, we tell them to call, but otherwise.
Even better.
Yep.
Even better.
Okay.
The question I have for you was really about the Bring Your Own Device program. I know that there's a lot of infrastructure work that's going on, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of great communication to the community and to the parents as to the accessibility of that program and really embracing it going forward. So what is our plan once you have this infrastructure in place? Is that for next school year that we are going to communicate that?
I'm eager for it, and
Okay.
I just need to work with our administrators. I think the administrators need to. I think it's more the adults need to warm to the idea more than anything. I think the community itself is interested. I think the control piece or the knowing the platform piece is what's causing a bit of the hiccup. But I'm working with the administrators. I've met with them, different subgroups to try to, work, and others have as well. So I think I think that you'll see this summer the communication. I'd like to believe, again, I can't commit, but my hope is that we'll be ever more alerting the community. It's an option. We do have them coming in, but it's not like we're not really chasing people to bring in devices. I can understand on some level. People, as I say, they like the comfortable, and we've been very successful with what we've done, but we need to move past that. We wanted to see this as a bridging opportunity.
It's almost been actively discouraged. for people bringing in devices
I,
right now.
I certainly, and I'm struggling with that. I'm catching that too.
So I guess, is our intention that next school year, this will be an officially supported program and that will articulate the capabilities to do this?
I would be.
I mean, I know that there's a coalition, there's education, you have to get people's buy-in on it.
Right.
But if we don't do it next school year, then you're gonna have people signing up for Chromebooks that, you know, they would prefer to do something else.
Yep.
Can I piggyback on that? And I only say this because this is kind of the world I live in outside of this world.
Yep.
I think some of the challenges from the teacher end include kids that bring various devices, and when something doesn't work, they take it to the teacher. And that disrupts the instructional time. So when you've got 10 different platforms and a couple of the kids can't get connected, or something doesn't look right, or it's not working, or the battery died, so they go to the teacher, and now the teacher is expected to fix those problems. And I think if we can find a solution where there are support systems built in each school, where if you've got such issues, you've got like student techs.
Yep.
Take it to that area, get it fixed, so you don't disrupt the instructional time. So I think that's part of, things that need to be worked through.
Or
Agreed, and I think alongside that, we also, because we're seeing, the 10-year-old laptops that are coming in too, and those are, Windows XP or something older and things like that. So we really need to also guide our community here. If you're gonna bring in a device, these are the OSs we're looking for, these are the minimum requirements to help make it successful for your student in the building. So, but I agree with you. I mean, partly, we can't saddle the teacher themselves, and we do actually have, especially at the park, a willingness on the student populace to be supportive of their peers. So we need to take advantage of that.
So I just would love to see us be more official about this kind of process. The Chromebooks that we have right now are getting long in the tooth.
Agreed.
And we've made a conscious decision not to accrue for money to support the device replacements, and with the goal of BYOD taking a lot of those devices out and then being able to reallocate the remaining devices to the students that maybe can't afford to have their own device or that need to have that option. And I'm worried that we're gonna hit a crucial point where we just won't have devices that will support what we need to do, and we're gonna end up having to spend a bunch of money.
Right. Well, I would say that one of our challenges is that the state test, the testing, right, M-STEP as an example, we can't do that on a personal device, right? So there's a kiosk app and it's a lockdown browser, and we actually have to provide a district device for that. So there has been an appreciation that we've now had so many devices in our schools that they can do what they hadn't been able to do before, where they used to just have to schedule through the labs at certain hours, and you couldn't really, you had to do it through the course of a day. Instead of taking it, noting that it's better to test when the kids are fresh in the morning in their own environment and in their classroom. So we've had the luxury of being able to test in a way that we hadn't before. People have appreciated that. I think, we're gonna have to balance, right? When we have device access, we might still need to have a larger amounts of devices that are capable for us to do these high stakes and important tests. But yeah, we're working, and I definitely am with you. I want to help promote the community's awareness that from an infrastructure standpoint, we're making it ever better for people to bring in their own device. It's really just the adults working out how to handle it well and helping the students too to negotiate with their devices.
Okay, I understand it's a hard problem, so
Yep.
thank you for the information.
You're welcome. And if I could, just to make a comment based on, you had asked about Kim and the EL, one of the things that we do, which is kind of nifty, we have a number of students that are using their Chromebooks principally, and they set them up in their own languages. So we have a number of students that are booting up and navigating throughout their whole computer experience. And even with, it's an imprecise, right, translate is imprecise, it still gives them a comfort level that they might not have experienced prior to having that kind of tool in their hands. So it's kind of nifty in that way.
That's cool.
Okay.
Cool.
I love the fact that you used nifty. Oh my goodness.
Other questions in Mark's area?
I don't think so. I think you're still on.
Okay. So my last area before I get to some questions that were not on specific areas, were for Anthony and the data side. I think you did a good job of talking to us about some of the work that you're doing in trying to standardize the data education and the practices around on that. You talked about the early warning and student dashboard system.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've seen that's problematic for a lot of parents, myself and my friends included, is that unless you're in MyStar every single week, paying attention to every single action and every single thing that's going on, you're gonna miss things. And like, one of my kids was really great until he wasn't. And he, great grades, everything's going okay, and then things fell off the cliff. And we weren't paying attention because everything was going really well in that process. So I guess what I'm looking for is what are our opportunities to do early warning for the teachers, but also early warning for the parents that say, if you start seeing things that are dropping off, assignments that are missing, if your grade is trending at a B and all of a sudden drops to a D, the parent gets an email, they get a notification. I mean, those kinds of processes happen all the time in the IT world, to be able to do proactive notifications on exceptions rather than managing on the steady state. If my kid is a B student and they're continuing to get a B, then I'm not necessarily that worried about it if they continue to have a B. But if their grade drops, I want to know. And how can we provide more early warning on those types of processes rather than telling, 17,000 student or parents to go into the system and keep looking at the data every single week?
So, in terms of the capability of the systems that we have and have access to, I'm not aware of settings around being able to say, when this parameter falls below this, then the system is going to send an email, right? And as a matter of fact, even within the systems that I've been looking at and trying to explore this year, even the most costly ones don't function at that level that I've seen yet. So, and that's not saying that I've seen or explored everything. And I would be cautious at really making it that passive, right? We would want our teachers and our students and our parents to activate in a more actionable way around the data and information, right? If it becomes so passive, then those communications aren't happening between the teachers and the students and the parents. So the students should know where they are, right? That communication should happen in the classroom. So, right, there's an aspect of passivity that would concern me, but with respect to specific systems, I haven't seen one yet where I know that capability exists.
So again, using my own student's example, A's, dropped off the cliff. And assignments missing, poor scores on tests. We didn't pay attention to it, the teacher didn't call us. So,
Right, and I would say that would be a conversation to have at the building level.
I know, but the data's there. If we were paying attention to MyStar every single week, we would have seen this problem. And it hasn't gone long. We caught the problem 4 weeks out. And so it's a correctable issue. But it is something, the data's there and the systems could do that. I mean, I guess if we could talk to our partners at RISA, because RISA is the responsible for MyStar, correct?
So I was gonna interject that there used to be a way in MyStar, and I don't know if it's still there because I haven't reset it up, but there used to be a way that you could get an email every day that would update your students' assignments.
There is, I was just gonna interject.
Okay.
There is a feature in there where I get a daily email for both of my kids, and it lists all their scores.
Okay.
Yeah, and I haven't worked from the Parent Connect side of things. I've always worked from the teacher aspect side of things, so there's some learning for me today.
Yeah. The biggest struggle is you want to do exception management, because people will stop paying attention to emails when everything's good.
And And I think to Patrick's point, perhaps just an FYI for parents with that tip, you know, just to alert, because I know there are a lot of flexibilities built within MyStar. You can get daily alerts for the parent reports, but the same thing can happen in Google Classroom. You know, I signed up for daily alerts, so I get all the updates from all of the teachers about those assignments. So maybe in one of the upcoming newsletters to parents, like a little friendly tip about, you know, how do you get those updates from MyStar and Google Classroom?
Nick Brandon, learn, prepare, thrive.
Yeah, there's
there we
your next
go.
article, Nick. Where'd you go?
And I guess the point I was making was really about early warning. You know, if you can do exception management, you catch things that if people are just, you get an information overload and information fatigue. Is that almost all daily, everything is always getting this. People stop paying attention to it. It's the nature of information distribution. It's when you have exception management that you can identify things that are exceptional, whether it be positive or negative, that you can catch those things, and that's the value of IT systems.
So I agree with you about emails, but I want to remind you that the district is not in charge of MyStar.
Right, but we're a customer, and we're one of the largest customers, so we can ask them to address these kinds of issues. So and it ties very much into this. I mean, talk to me maybe a little bit more about what your early warning system would do.
Well, really, what I'm looking for first, right, looking at scaling things out, would be situations where building level teams, right, child study teams, building administrators, guidance counselors would have reporting or access to dashboards where they would be able to see where students are with respect to certain preset indicators that have. So basically setting up filters and knowing, you know, when students cross or cross below a threshold for a certain filter and that kind of piece. So that's what we're looking for.
The exact same thing would be awesome if the parents could set up that same access, because that's exactly what I'm asking.
So there is something happening at the state level with the state data hubs.
Right.
I think what you're talking about is in the works at the state level for the parents to access all of those kind of things, but I think it's going to be another 2 to 3 years before we see that, because there's funding issues.
Right. If my point is, if we don't start asking for these things, we won't.
Oh,
get
they're
them.
there.
So-
Yeah.
So let's get back to the
Okay.
plan, please.
So that was it for my regular questions. I had a broader question about some things that I didn't hear talked about. For as long as I've been engaged with the board, for the last 4 years, one of the things that has been a focus for me is making sure that we support differentiation and advanced learners throughout the district. And I think that we've done a really admirable job of supporting the students that need special services, our English language learners, et cetera. With this administration, we've stopped saying we're going to destroy the existing magnet tag program, but I don't think we've done enough to provide the acceleration and advanced opportunities for the students in their home schools. There's a very small population of students that we have in the district that qualify and meet the needs of the magnet tag program. There are some that may be needing additional support in specific subject areas, but not in other areas. We talked specifically about some of the things that we wanted to do with differentiation for advanced learners and exploring the expansion of the IB to the middle and elementary level. We talked about that last February 2017, that we wanted to have that be a priority. And I'm not seeing anything on that on this list. It's not part of the plans for this year. It's not part of the plans for next year. And I don't see, outside of the compaction program with respect to math and some of the opportunities for reading, there's not really anything else that is supporting that. So I guess where is that on your agenda, and when do we start to see those things? And I'm sorry, one
So
more point.
absolutely.
And one more point on this. When we look at the students that oftentimes leave for the charters, there's a perception that the charters do a better job of this. Whether that's real or not, that is a perception that's there. And I think that they talk about these programs, and I know in my friend set that they actually achieve good results in that differentiation, whether it be clustering or other processes that provide opportunities for those students. And I don't think that we're marketing to those parents that are looking for something more and that don't qualify for that, that tag program. And I think that this is a real chance for us to not only serve the needs of all students, but also to promote our capabilities in the district that could help support those kinds of students.
So I'm probably going to actually have Liz also join the conversation with Dr. Binder. When we talked about implementation cycle, and we shared how, for example, when Maureen was talking with ELA this summer, we really had to work to get the toothpaste back in the tube. So we did a lot of work prematurely. That's why we're asking you to kind of support these units and get these books now. So we got that rolling. But when we look at a true implementation cycle, even what's presented within our teacher's contract, that's supposed to be a 3 to 5 year plan. And so as we explore some of the conversations that you saw for the differentiation, we currently have teachers that are working in committee on the work of developing these courseworks, the coursework for advanced learning within our middle school setting. And so those would be the full, when we look at the IB program, having to back into the IB program, getting our high school programs straight first, and there's a process that I'll have them kind of explain. And so that's where we knew that that was a priority. Remember when we initially did the plan, that actually had fallen off the plan, that became a priority of the board. And so we looked to say, how do we back into that to get that implemented within the 5 years? So that is all about implementation cycle. And when she was addressing, there's a lot of work that's going on, as you see. We've been talking for the last couple of hours.
It's
yeah, so
great
it's
work,
definitely
but
not.
I didn't hear anything specifically in these areas.
So because remember that we're specifically addressing our progress this year, and so that's where we're looking to future progress. But she can kind of share some back work that's going on right now.
Specifically around the IB?
Yeah, you can-
Okay, so that was actually brought up at one of our SPA meetings that we had presented on, and it was kind of to talk about an update. And when we've looked at neighboring schools that have IB programs, Ann Arbor, Novi, those type of schools that have these programs, we noticed that we need a little more support in our high school setting with that program. So when we talk about that, we're really talking about people, FTE, and how that needs to be a strong foundation before we start moving into other areas. So when we say that, there are coordinators that are funded just for that program because of the level of need. So program pieces such as CAS and TOK, which are required in the IB program, we have that kind of push-in services as opposed to separate courses. So there's a lot of work that we need to really do to build a stronger foundation in our high school. And when that's ready to go, we would like to kind of start building backwards. But we feel as though to start building forward without having a solid foundation would kind of be a little bit premature on our half. So the goal would be to start getting that solid and then looking into ways to build in the middle school or elementary years program.
So towards that end, maybe we can get an update either as part of the budget process or in board notes as to those efforts and the work that you're doing at the high school level.
Member Kehoe, can you remember to use your microphone?
Sorry.
Thanks.
Maybe we can get an update in the board notes or in a subsequent communication as to what is the work that we're doing to support this at the high school level. So, I mean, maybe perhaps as part of the budget process or what have you. I mean, I think that the IB is one part of that, but I think there's also opportunities for additional differentiation just in the homeschool programs.
Yep. So I'm gonna. So going back to a little bit of the curriculum process, and when we look at it, it's when you go to rewrite your curriculum and the standards and redo your units. The idea is once that's set, it then sets the platform to either enrich or to do accommodation. So as we go through the process, that's part of it, but not until we have the whole curriculum set up. So that's why math is going through that process currently, because we were able to finish that math curriculum through 6 and Algebra 2, and then we can obviously differentiate as we move through. So once that's set, it makes the enrichment and the accommodation, both ends, work a lot easier for us, right? So we can build that together. So students aren't missing standards, but we're still able to address those standards. I think also, and I'm going to speak a little bit, I don't know all the work that is done there, but with Gallimore specifically, they are looking at ways to enrich, and there's no reason why we can't use some of that work as we go through our curriculum process and build that into the other buildings as well.
Right. So math, you said, is done 6 through 6 through 12?
So through the graduation requirement, so 6, 7, 8, algebra, geometry, algebra 2. And their corresponding courses.
And then what are the other, like for the other curriculum, we've got ELA, science, everything else. Where do those fit on our timeline to complete that curriculum work?
Sure. So
Is
I
that
brought, yep.
3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, so I brought that up when I first spoke about what information is going to be done next. So remember, ELA is currently going on in the elementary, and it's also going through the secondary level as well. We are starting with the choice unit, and you did make the point in regards to the reading, right? So that also gets to advanced learners, right? Because they can then read books at their levels, or they're looking at other interests there, and then their writing also would correspond with that. So when we talk about the ELA, we have, it's very often broken up into reading and writing. So we'd also look at the writing standards and writing rubrics and how we would differentiate that too. So again, with an Excel, with a rubric type, platform where students are using a rubric that would be a K-12 aligned rubric or a 6-12 aligned rubric, they would be able to advance their studies in writing, right? Because they wouldn't necessarily have to be built off that 6th grade rubric, but I could be moving them to a 7th grade. So I'm always looking at ways to enrich, but not necessarily meaning they should be out of that grade level, right? Because there's still important information. The other part with the other groups, so we said social studies is going to be starting this summer and over the school year. That would be in the secondary. And then again for science, we've been doing a lot of the exploration and the planning, and that work will be done again. We're starting at the end of this year and over the summer and over, of course, this 18-19 year with science as well.
So do you expect then by the end of 2018, 2019 that the curriculum work will be finished in all 4 areas?
So I would expect, so for instance, if we go back to that cycle, they're doing all the planning right now. Revising can take up to a year to almost 2 years, because depending on it, you may need to pilot something out. So with the math, we're going to roll out the algebra and advanced algebra and do a slow roll. The reason why we do that is because if we jump just from, what we're currently teaching to just the new curriculum, then there'll be gaps in the curriculum, right? So we would have to create a subsequent curriculum to meet those gaps.
Bridging.
So if we do a slower roll, if we can, that's what we would opt to do first. So in math specifically, we're going to do the algebra and advanced algebra. The following year, we'll do geometry and algebra 2 at the same time, because the
Go
gaps won't be there.
backwards.
Yep, exactly.
I do really just want to emphasize, first, just to thank the team for the incredible amount of work that's gone into implementing this plan. So when we think about just the realization of a 5-year curriculum development cycle, that is huge. And so we know, our teachers know what's coming next. When we're piloting textbooks, we're not buying textbooks in advance and then going back to try to create curriculum to fix it. And so everything that is a part of this plan, as I said, this is our compass. And so that differentiation is all a part of the work. Everything ties together, and that work will be done. And the promise that we continue to make to our teachers is we're not, because we have these lofty goals, we want to get them done, but we cannot expect you to do it well if we just say we're doing this year. So we truly have to commit to an implementation plan that allows us to get this work done and really support them in the work that they need to do in working with our kids. But know if it's on this paper that will be accomplished by this.
Okay.
And I want to say, and the other part is the students in thinking about where those gaps in learning may occur, right? So if we're doing that curriculum process, our biggest thing is when we roll out, if we roll out too fast, then students would be going to the next level with a gap, and that's what we're trying to prevent.
Right, but I mean, hopefully if you do the rollout properly and you have the right differentiation, then you'll assess that and you'll have the curriculum to be able to cover those gaps.
That would be a goal. That's
So-
exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay. Okay, so this is not just to make sure that I set my expectations correctly on this, this is a 3 or 4 year project, not a 1 to 2 year project.
Correct. So when we look at the curriculum process, remember those 4 phases, we kind of have it planned out how long it will take in each of those phases. So in the planning phase, that's about the 1 school year, right? So we look at that saying you're going to do the planning. We're going to start getting the team together to discuss that and start evaluating where we're at. the next one where we revise and edit. Now, if we have a process where we don't have state standards that are changing and, you know, we've been through this, we won't have many revise and edits, right? So we might be able to move through that quicker, and maybe it's more a resource or a support material, and it won't take another year. But if we're looking at piloting something, then, you know, we're going to take at least the half year to pilot it and then bring it to the board if we're looking at a new resource. So it depends on what our needs are.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're done. Okay. All right. Well,
And I do want to thank
you're
everybody
done.
for all the great work that you did. And I know that there was a lot of questions and everything else, but this is the most important thing that we do, teaching and learning. And I really appreciate the time that you put into combining the materials, explaining it, and then being very patient in answering my questions.
And
Yes.
I want to jump in that too, as I just began that conversation, so I appreciate that, because this is truly why we are here, and we have such a talented team of directors here in our teaching and learning department. When I talk about being student-focused, I hope that you heard that, so all of this work is about how to make things better for our students. When we talk about our vision of propelling each and every student to excellence, every person that spoke before you today is fully committed to that work. And I hope you heard the theme of building capacity within our teachers and our administrators. So this is big work, it's hard work. We have a committed team. They know their stuff and they are leading us in the right direction. I'm so proud of them and so proud of this opportunity to be able to share all the work and the progress on that goal, on that plan. So thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you all. I appreciate all the work that was put into this, and the dedication, and your being here still. And I also want to tell the staff from the other departments that I am sorry that we got so involved in teaching and learning, which we all love, but that we aren't able to get to their part of the presentation tonight. That being said, I would like to move on to our action items for the evening. First, we have action item 1804-136, consider approval of a resolution for cooperative education program agreement between Livonia Career Technical Center and Plymouth Canton Community Schools for the 2018-2019 school year. This is a first and final reading, so I'm looking for a motion on this.
Madam President, I move that we consider approval of action item 1804-136, a resolution for a cooperative education program agreement between Livonia Career Technical Center and Plymouth Canton Community Schools for the 2018-19 school year, a first and final reading.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Motion was made by Member Mullen and supported by Member Brooks. Is there any discussion on this? Okay. I want to remind everyone that this is a program that our students go to in Livonia, and so every year we do a resolution on this to allow our district to be able to continue to have this agreement. Okay, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, next action item is 1804-137. Consider approval of a resolution for a cooperative education program agreement between Wayne Westland Community Schools and Plymouth Canton Community Schools for the 2018-2019 school year, first and final reading. Do I have a motion on this one?
Madam President, I move that we approve action 1804-137, approval of a resolution for a cooperative education program agreement between Wayne Westland Community Schools and the Plymouth Canton Community Schools for the 2018-2019 school year, a first and final reading.
Support.
Okay, the motion was made by Member Mullen and supported by Member Brooks. Is there any discussion on this one? Okay, and this is the same kind of agreement that we do every year to allow our students to participate in their program. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, next up is a discussion on the May 22nd board meeting date. you may remember that we got an inquiry from Daniel Ramos about having board members attend the award, what's it called, honors ceremony, honors night at the high schools. And unfortunately, our May 22nd meeting is scheduled at the same time as the Plymouth High School honors night. And our superintendent is a Plymouth High School parent of a senior this year. So I wanted to discuss what our options would be for that. Monica, do you want to talk about what were some of the things you thought of?
I know we had looked at potentially May 29th, so last year we had this similar situation, and since we had the 5 Tuesdays, we were able to have our meeting on the last week on Tuesday, so wanted to see if that could be the last Tuesday of the month, which for us would be
The 29th,
the
right?
29th, see if that would be a possibility to move the meeting.
I don't have a problem with it.
I'm traveling on the 22nd and was flying back to come to the board meeting, and I'm traveling on the 29th as well, so.
Okay, and I know that Member Crouch said that the 29th was probably going to be an issue for her.
What about
Can
the
we
night
start
before?
later?
I was wondering about that. Can we? Do you think we can reschedule to like 7:30 or?
I think the program itself goes until, is it 8:30?
Yeah.
The program is scheduled to, so I don't know.
Any other day that week?
What about the night before? How about a Monday night? Does it always have to be a Tuesday?
I'm out of town on that Monday and
The
Tuesday. I
21st?
booked my travel. I had a conversation about this and booked my travel to come back specifically for the meeting, so.
Did we talk about the week before?
The 15th?
I'm traveling the week of the 15th as well. So, I mean, you don't have to work around my schedule, but
How about the 23rd?
No.
Wednesday, no?
Yeah, that's Canton's night.
Yeah.
That's Canton's
Oh,
honors
that's,
night.
all
Yeah.
3
I
of
think
those
it's
days?
3 nights in a row. am I
Yeah,
right?
it's
Tuesday,
3 nights,
Wednesday,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Sure.
So is there a possibility of, let's see. Is there a possibility of you coming late to the meeting?
Yes, I can do that.
The regular meeting then,
Mhm.
we're back to the regular day on the 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
So the 22nd, we're looking at budget, right? That's the meeting for, to review the budget, so I know it's important, I would say, for the
Yeah,
treasurer
it's-
to be there.
Yes.
Yeah, so we can look at that if that's not, we said the 15th didn't work, or the 29th didn't work, right?
Yeah.
They don't work for Patrick.
they don't work for me.
And with the budget update, I think it would be important to have him here.
Okay,
We
so-
could also start later, and so to minimize Monica's missing the whole thing, we could start at 7:30 or
Okay.
something like that, just to minimize the impact. Because we might have regular business that we need to do before we get into the budget discussion.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That works.
You sure?
We gotta do what we gotta do.
Okay.
Well, is there another night, Patrick, that would be better for you, maybe? Speaking as this is your son's night, maybe you want to have the
I
time to
mean-
be with your family after the honors night. And I think
Yeah, I mean,
you don't get that night back.
I can do Friday the 25th. It's not an honors night.
Absolutely not. Why don't we look to make it a later meeting, and we'll make it work.
We don't want you to have to miss it. I mean, you guys can do the
We can-
meeting
I can
without me,
work
too.
with my team, and we're all on the same page, so they can speak for me if I'm not here by the time we have those discussions. And when we present to you the budget, we know that we've already, tomorrow we're going into budget transformation, so we will emerge with a budget that is a mutual consensus from the entire administrative group. So I feel confident if I'm not here, that they'll represent the needs of the district well.
Do you need to be at all 3 honors nights? You were going to all 3? Okay.
Okay, well, seems like the best compromise.
So it's the 22nd.
It's still the 22nd.
What time?
What are we thinking?
Would 8 be too late?
No.
Nope.
Well, we say we can start at 8 if that would work. And that gives, I think, our normal start of business is about 45 minutes by the time we do celebrating success, which means that will be the end of the program.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Patty, does that work for
Patty?
you?
I get up at 5, it's fine.
So, since we're changing the time of a regular meeting, I'm thinking we need a resolution. So we'll have that at our next board meeting.
We can do that.
Okay. Alrighty, so, now follow-up board questions. So I have for outstanding, yes,
It means we'll need to do a F&O meeting on Thursday, the 17th. Patty, are you okay with that?
I have to check.
okay, so follow-up board questions. More information on the 3rd grade reading plan and resources to come to the SPA committee. Meeting that's still outstanding, I believe. And data on the number of days of instruction time missed for suspensions. That we got in board notes, but I think that there were some questions about it. But we can continue to follow up through board notes.
Yes.
And then from our last meeting, we had breakdown data of the start time survey by level and cohort for each model, and health and medical data for the start time data. And that's more just general information about,
I think we got the breakdown from the cohort. Was that sufficient to answer that question?
I don't remember. I'll take a look at it.
We still have the health and medical data and the timeline that will be
Yep.
coming in the board notes.
yep. Okay, and then from today's meeting, I have that, and I just sort of wrote down what I thought you meant, Patrick, but outline of restorative practices implementation schedule.
Yeah, there's 4 phases, and it's
Yeah.
a 3 to 5 year program. Just
Right.
some information as to what those 4 phases are, where we're at in the process, and what are the other work that needs to be done.
We actually may be able to cover that. We have training on the next board meeting and the special meeting. I think Collins and Blaha will be there.
Yeah.
Maybe we can integrate that into their
That's
work.
great. That's
Yeah.
just, I know that it was talked about in one of the other committees,
Yes.
but I don't think it was shared to the full board.
Sounds good.
Okay, was there anything else that I missed from tonight? Okay, all right, well, at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Support.
Okay, motion made by Member Mullen and supported by Member Brooks. Any discussion? No. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We are now adjourned. Thank you all for